All right, hey everybody, we're here with Emily Cook, a three-time Olympic coach, and she's a champion mentor for young athletes, for classrooms for champions, which I just did a segment on. It was a lot of fun. And thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. And thanks for joining us at Classroom Champions the other day.
Oh, you're very welcome. You know, this is athletes giving back to athletes is what we're doing here. So I want to jump right into it. I want to go way back when you first started. I know you were a gymnast, I think, at first, and then you went into skiing. So talk about early on what kind of led you in that direction.
I was just a kid that liked to do a lot of stuff. You know, I got really bored easily, and I was raised by my dad, actually. So my mom passed away when I was really young, and my dad all of a sudden had a toddler to raise on his own. And, you know, he recognized early on that I was the kind of kid that needed stuff to fill all of that energy that I had. So he tried a couple different sports with me, and gymnastics clicked right away. I loved flipping and running, and it also taught me how to fall, which was good because as such an active kid, I was falling a lot. And I just loved gymnastics. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And my dad loved skiing as well, and he wanted a ski buddy. So he taught me how to ski. And then eventually those two sports just came together as the perfect combination of the two things that I love to do.
Awesome. Now, tell me, how did the kind of goal and vision grow? When did you first realize, like, hey, this is something I want to take extra serious?
It was around age 12, actually, that, you know, someone asked me, an old coach asked me, you know, what are your goals in skiing? And I had no idea at 12 years old. I was like, I have no idea. I don't know. But we thought about it really hard. I realized that it was what I wanted to do for a very long time. And I decided that 10 years from then, when I was about 22 years old, is when would be the perfect time to go to my first Olympic Games. So when I was 12 years old, I set the goal to go to the Olympic Games in 2002. And little did I know they would be in our backyard in Salt Lake City, Utah. At the time, they hadn't named the site yet. So I just knew that I wanted to go in 10 years and nothing was going to get in my way.
That's awesome. So who were some of your mentors early on? I'm assuming your coach was one of them, but did you have outside mentors that really helped you out too?
Yeah, I was really lucky growing up. I had a lot of really influential people around me, both male and female, but I had a really strong group of females around me that taught me that, you know, if I wanted to accomplish going to the Olympic Games, that I could do that. So I grew up skiing at Sugarloaf, a ski area in Maine. And there were a lot of women there who were just powerhouses in my sport. So I got to meet Olympians when I was 12 years old. And my coach was female as well. And she was three-time national champion. And I thought she was the coolest thing in the entire world. And she was the perfect coach. You know, she was strict, but she was also really kind. And I knew that she cared about me, and I trusted her. And I knew that she was technically sound. And so I felt really comfortable with her. And so did my dad. So she really kind of raised me as an athlete from age 12 or earlier even until I was 18 years old or 17 when I made the national team. And then I moved out of the East Coast right afterwards to come to Utah to pursue the dream of going to the Olympics.
Wonderful. Now, is there a story? I like to ask this question. Your ski coach, is there a story or lesson that kind of jumps to the top of your head when you first think about her?
Joni she was the best. Everyone thought she was like really hardcore and super strict with the athletes that she was coaching. And I loved it. You know, there's a lot of times when you're growing up where you face difficult decisions, right? Whether to go to a certain party or whether to go to a dance or whether you're going to, you know, stay the path and do what you want to accomplish, right? So there were so many choices along the way where, you know, my friends were off doing things that I kind of wanted to do with them, but, you know, I had to make the choice to go to training or to go to Maine for the weekend and train that weekend or to go to a certain competition. And Joni was really good about providing us with really good guidance of, you know, we can have fun here safely as our team, as a group. And, you know, those parties that are going on over there, you know, that's just not what we do. That's not who we are, right? So she kind of ingrained that into me young. And by the time I was an adult and striving towards my last Olympic Games, I knew that I was doing everything right
Yeah.
going into that last Olympic Games. And those are the lessons that were ingrained in me when I was really young. And at that point, you put everything that you can into something, right? Into preparing for an Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And at that point, when you go there and you perform your best, you can walk away feeling really proud. So I think Joni put that work and ethic into me at a really young age, and also helped me make some, challenging choices as a young woman.
Yeah. Everybody I ask says usually the same thing. They had a lot of people that helped them out along the way, because, and that's one of the things that when you do make it to a certain level in athletics, you get really emotional, because there's so many people that went into you that helped you get where you
Yeah.
are. And it's a combination of so many people. So at the Olympics, when just being there, it took so many hours and so many people that invested in you. So it's a really special moment. And that's why I think so many people are drawn to the Olympics. So fast forwarding to that point, when you were heading to your first Olympics, talk about a little bit about that, when you knew you were going and being in your backyard, and talk a little bit about what was going inside, your head amongst all the excitement.
Yeah. So I had told you that around age 12, I decided I wanted to go to the Olympics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, fast forward 10 years, I'm at my first Olympic trial, and it's at the Olympic venue. It's in Park City, Utah, which is where I still live to this day, but it was my home then as well. There was a crowd of 20,000 people there. The Olympic Stadium was already all set up. All the stands were all set up. And
yeah.
It was New Year's Eve. So it was just this really amazing feeling going into this Olympic trial. And I did two of my best jumps of my life that night, skied to the bottom, and realized, that I had won the competition and I would be going to the Olympic Games in a few weeks, because the games were in February. This was January 1st, basically, by the time midnight hit. So it was the coolest feeling to know that I was an Olympian. That gave me my first piece of Olympic clothing. And, I stood up on the podium next to someone who was my hero. It was Eric Burgess, who won that Olympic trial with me, who had won the Olympics in 1998. So he was an Olympic gold medalist. And
awesome.
It was a really, really cool moment to share with friends and family. Since it was home, there were so many people there cheering for me, and my dad was there, obviously. So it was a really, really cool moment. But as an athlete, obviously, you reach that goal, you check that one off. That's one of the short-term goals of actually, achieving, walking into the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games. It's a big one to check off, but you go back to your training, go back to competition. And, for myself, I actually ended up with 17 days to go to get to the Olympic Games, taking a jump, landing on the flat part of the hill instead of the landing hill, and shattering both of my feet.
Right.
So in 17 days, I went from this moment where all of my dreams came true to knowing that I wasn't going to be able to compete in the Olympic Games. And instead I was, going to have to decide what to do with myself after surgery. So that was a challenge for sure. That was a very pivotal moment in my life, not just my athletic career.
Right. Now I want to pause and kind of walk back through the story you just told. Let's rewind to when you did your first two of your best jumps. I always wondered this too, because you're doing a lot of, you're in the air for a long time and you're doing a lot of moves. And I wanted to know what kind of is your mindset. Let's go back to the beginning of that day. Because I know some Olympians, they want it to be the exact same as training. So they wake up, they eat the same thing, they want to take the same amount of time to do this and that. So some of them's all regimented. And then, so I want to talk about that first. And then the second part is right before you kind of get the green light where you're actually starting. What's kind of going through your mind there? So it's kind of a two-part question.
Yeah, I got it. So I was the type of competitor that was kind of what you were saying, just super regimented. And you either want competition to feel like training, or you want training to feel like competition, right? One or the other, so that it's not, you don't get in the gate at an Olympic Games and all of a sudden you're really nervous because there's a big stadium filled with people. So I always tried to treat training like it was competition. You know, there's obviously the time to build skills and stuff like that where you're going to do things that aren't perfect, right? You're not going to do a perfect jump every time. But for me, having a routine was really important.
What was
you know, there was no lucky
routine?
socks. There were no lucky socks or anything because you could lose your lucky socks the morning of.
Okay.
But it was a flexible routine, you know. So
Okay.
it was, I had a really similar breakfast every morning. I did yoga every morning when I was an athlete, so that got both my mind and my body in the right mindset for the
Absolutely.
right body set.
Mhm.
I always had that preparation even before I went to the hill. So that's just kind of what I did, whether it was in my hotel room or if I was competing from home or training from home, I would do that just to kind of set the day up.
Mhm.
I also did a daily journal, which had my intention and goals for the day, as well as a couple of things I was thankful for. So just really just that routine of getting everything in line for the day.
Right.
And then I had a similar routine for warm up when I arrived at the venue. And then when I got to the top of the hill, really similar. I had always had headphones in. I always listened to music before competition, and it was always just kind of a repetitive, like, I don't know, kind of electronic type music where there weren't a lot of lyrics to be distracting. Just, you know, something really mellow.
Yeah.
Mellow was really important to me because if I got too excited, I didn't jump well. I had to
Yeah.
keep everything really chill. So I did that. And then in the gate, just did a couple different visualizations. I let my coaches really focus on the things that were out of my control. So, you know, we have a lot of factors that come into things like wind. Speed is really important as you're coming down the in run. So I always just left that to my coaches and did my best not to think about it at all and just focus 100% on the stuff that I could control. For example, my takeoff, you had to think about really technical things about how to set the right rotation coming off the jump. And then, you know, where to drop an arm, just all these really technical things. So for myself, when I was competing, when I was in the gate, it was all technical thought by the time I got into the gate. If there was anything distracting, I got rid of it before I got in the gate.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's that routine and that mindset it's just so important. And I wanted to rewind to that to give people an idea of what it takes. And it's not just what you see on TV. It's there's a whole week, month, everything's regimented and planned out.
Yeah.
How were you the night before? Were you someone who stayed up and slept on and off, or could you sleep all the way through, or did it kind of vary?
I wasn't a great sleeper as an athlete, actually.
I was
But
too.
for that reason, I was just really regimented about my sleep routine. So dark room, eye mask, often you have roommates, so earplugs. I always read before bed to kind of bring things down a little bit.
Mhm.
And I generally would do some movement before bed as well, or meditation or something like that. So just tried to get everything really calm as possible. Had a very simple dinner.
Yeah.
You can't always control exactly what they're going to provide for you when you're on tour, but
Mhm.
just making sure it was really simple, not something that was going to get in my way, anything like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, the night before it was the plan with the coach. So sit down with the coach, watch
Mhm.
video, make sure you have your plan for the next day. So there's nothing to think about. Pack your bag so you don't have to look for stuff in the morning. Like
Yeah.
everything's just set up and ready to go. So when
Yeah.
you wake up, you can do your routine and be ready to go.
Mhm.
And then just get really mellow in the evening. It's funny, I had a teammate and a roommate who was much younger than me for a lot of my career.
Mhm.
When I was 28, she was 16.
Oh, wow.
And then, we roomed together for many years after that. So, the two of us had kind of different vibes. Like she was super high energy and I was really like super chill, calm energy. And
Mhm.
we complemented each other nicely. She kind of like brought the fun out of me and I brought the chill into her. So, we roomed together really nicely and learned a lot from each other throughout our career.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that story. Now, when you're actually, I'm assuming when you're going down, you kind of blank your mind. You're kind of just
Mm-hmm.
using muscle memory and not thinking too much while you're going. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I had a couple keywords always. So the one or two things that I had to think about while I was coming down the in run in order to be on. But yeah, I mean, you go into, you hear athletes talk all the time about like this state of flow or being in the zone,
Yeah.
and that's a very, very real thing. So I just made sure that my focus was really narrow. So I was never seeing stuff that was outside of here. I couldn't hear the crowd. It was all just really focused. The one person I could hear was the coach that was up top with me. So he would stand in the gate with me and, tell me anything I needed to remember or, adjust my speed, meaning step up or step back down if I needed to. So, and this was actually, this coach was a good friend of mine as well. So, we had a great working relationship, and he knew exactly what to say, and exactly how to change that for each athlete. So like I said, for myself, I was super mellow. And then that teammate I was just talking about, she's Ashley Caldwell. She's amazing, world champion. She's still competing and she's killing it. But he would turn to her and then be like super high energy and like, all right, Caldwell, let's go. Whereas with me, he had to be like, okay, everything is perfect. You're good. Right. Like just right. Super mellow. So, every athlete has their thing, but it's just about discovering what that thing is along the way. And for me, it was just, I knew that I performed best when I was really mellow, super focused on one or two little things, stand up tall, eyes on the end of the jump, and then everything would fall into place from there.
Yeah. Wonderful. The coach had it absolutely right, because every athlete is kind of wired different. So the music in the headphones is always different. How you're feeling before. I used to kind of just lay back and almost go to sleep right before the game.
Super mellow.
Every little bit of energy I had for what I needed to do.
Yeah.
So
totally.
Now
and yours is an intense game too. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess aerials could be considered intense too.
Yeah. I mean, hey, everybody's wired different. Some people, were the headbangers and would, it was one of my old teammates. It's crazy. He would have the trainers smack him in the face before the game just to get him ready.
Well, as a coach, I didn't have to do that.
I don't recommend anybody doing that now unless you're that crazy. But some people are chill. Some people listen to gospel music. I mean, there's a lot of different, and it's a high intense sport. But I want to shift now into kind of the drama of when you did land on the flat part. And do you remember that at all? Or did you wake up and talk about I want to kind of bring people into, and I want to know too, I'm curious of how that was and what was going through your mind.
Yeah. It for sure was traumatic. I'm not going to lie. Looking back on that, it shaped everything. It shaped who I am today. It shaped, the fact that I'm still involved in athletics. It shaped, who I became as an athlete, just getting through that. But going back to that moment, so like I said about the wind and the different elements, it can really affect an athlete. So what happened is I got a headwind. So the wind was coming towards my face as I was coming down the in run. And it was also snowing, which will also affect your speed a little bit. Right. So when the second I got up the jump, the second it was too late you don't really turn back when you're jumping, but the second I got up in the air, I knew that it was bad. I knew it wasn't going to be okay. And when we jump, we have coaches who do what they call us. So they'll yell at us when we're in the air and tell us what to do. And usually that's just your one coach. No one else. It's a total breach of etiquette for another coach to call a different athlete, right? So if you're telling an athlete what to do in the air, it's got to be your athlete. Right. And anyway, so when I was in the air, I heard every coach on the knoll yell pull, which means get in a small tuck position, try to speed up your rotation as fast as possible, because every coach on the knoll from every country knew that I was in trouble. But there was nothing I could do. So I got myself in the tiniest ball that I could, got really small to speed up my rotation. And I landed perfectly on my feet, but I landed perfectly on my feet on the part of the hill that I wasn't supposed to land on. So too short, too far back towards the jump. And at that time, the jumps were prepared a little bit differently. This is quite a long time ago. And it was basically like an ice sheet that I landed on. So if you can imagine kind of jumping out of a 2-story building and landing flat on, hard ice, it's not great. So when I landed, I mean, I knew two things. I knew, one, that I was in an incredible amount of pain. It was incredibly painful, that injury.
Mm-hmm.
But I also knew it was the real deal. You know, it wasn't a little injury that I was going to be able to come back from. And the second I hit, I knew that. So I slid to the bottom of the hill. Everyone knew immediately that I was hurt. So my coach jumped down the hill, which is, you know, kind of, that doesn't happen very often either. Slid down to the bottom of the hill with me, and I just started crying immediately. And, you know, they were like, what hurts? And I told them, but I also told them, like, this is it. I'm not going to the games. Like, I said that before they took me off of the hill. Like, I just knew that it was immediate. And,
Right.
But I also knew that everything happened for a reason. And honestly, like, you know, the second they got me off the hill and they were trying to get my ski boots off and stuff, which is a whole nother drama, I knew everything happened for a reason. And I said that out loud as well. I said, look, this isn't going to go well. I know that. But everything happened for a reason. And I'm, you know, like, it's going to be okay. And so, let's see what happened from there. I remember getting carted off the hill, sent to the hospital. They had gotten my boots off by then, and just going through the evaluation. They thought it was 1 foot at first, and then they realized it was both feet. And, you know, thankfully my dad was there. So I went back to this condo that he had rented, and the two of us sat there, and I remember falling asleep on the couch. And I remember my dad and my coach talking, and I remember them talking about how challenging this was going to be for all of them, because we had all been in this for a long time together. You know, It was going to be as equally as challenging for my dad as it was for me, because this was his dream. It was my coach's dream. It was my dream. And I remember listening to them, and I remember listening to them saying, you know, this is going to be really hard, but she's going to get through it. And, you know, I don't know, like, as a kid, I always found it really comforting to sleep, but be able to hear what's going on around me as well. And I remember being really comforted in that moment, knowing that everything was going to be okay. And then, you know, a couple of days later, we made it official that I wasn't going to go to the games, that, you know, surgery was going to be the next thing that was going to happen. And we knew that there was someone that was going to take my place next. And so my coach asked if I wanted to be the one to call him and tell him. It was a friend of mine who I'd been training with for a really long time. And so I got to call up a very close friend and tell him that, you know, I wasn't going to get to compete, but he was going to get to compete in my place. And that was really cool. You know, I didn't think I was going to go to the Olympics in Salt Lake. I thought I was going to, like, go to Hawaii or somewhere warm where I wasn't going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
But when I was talking with that teammate on the phone, I realized that it was going to be amazing to be there to cheer him on and the rest of my teammates on. And so I chose to stay in Salt Lake and have my Olympic experience, even though it was different.
What a roller coaster of emotions from that couple weeks. And it's great you kind of had that, I don't know what to call it, but that steadiness to be able to realize it's going to be okay, to say that out loud, that things happen for a reason, and then to be able to select someone else and cheer them on. It says adversity always brings out, you know, true character, and it molds your identity too. So a lot of cool things in that period of time. So thanks for sharing. And let's go to the end of that. So the Olympics are now over. What is your kind of mindset now? Are you kind of in rehab mode, or are you kind of like, you know, let's get this on so we could get back? Like, what was your mentality kind of once that ended?
Well, it got really quiet. It got really quiet after the Olympics. You know, it was such a crazy 2.5 weeks of trying to go to events, but, you know, I was post-op, so I was, you know, not feeling great. And then afterwards, everybody got on a plane and left and went back on World Cup, and it got really, really, really quiet. So I had some really core people around me during that time. I had my aunt who helped raise me, and I had my dad. I had my best friend, Corey. I had some really, really good people who helped to ground me during that time, because that's kind of when I got sad afterwards. And honestly, it's kind of a pattern. A lot of athletes go through a really big downer after an Olympic Games. And that one was a big one, even though I hadn't competed. But at the same time, I woke up every morning and I had, you know, the picture of the Olympic rings on my bedroom mirror. And that was inspiring and it motivated me. And the days that it didn't motivate me, I had promised myself I was going to do the work anyways. Because there was absolutely nothing that was going to keep me from getting back to walking into the opening ceremony for real the next time. So it actually took 3 years to get back to jumping. 3 years.
Wow.
And I didn't know it was going to take 3 years. But the biggest thing I learned during that time was just, be inspired by that big motivating factor, right? The walking into the Olympic Games. But if that motivation goes away, you just got to be committed and rely on your commitment, because sometimes you're not going to wake up feeling inspired, but you have to go and do the work anyways. Yeah. And so that was the biggest thing. One of the biggest things that I learned throughout those 3 years is just to do the work anyways, because you said you would do it.
Into a 3-year rehabilitation, both feet, bones and ligaments exploding. Even walking again was in question.
To give people an idea of what Emily did, she made her foot go from a size 6 to a size 2 inside a ski boot. And I can't believe that she's even standing because the doctors told her she wasn't going to be.
Regardless of how bad her day was, how much her feet hurt, every single day from the very start was ready to go again.
Yeah. Now, so many good lessons from what you just said. Talk to me real quick. The Olympic rings on the mirror, did you put that there or how did that get there?
Oh, I had like quotes on my bathroom mirror. I had like pictures up everywhere. I had as many physical reminders as I could of what that dream was. I had a training log that I filled out every morning that had different athletes' pictures on them and quotes about how to overcome adversity, and it was everywhere. I had it in my face all over the place in case I forgot. And some mornings I didn't want to go to physical therapy. That wasn't why I started the sport, obviously, but I knew that the end result of representing my country at an Olympic Games was going to be worth it. Yeah,
awesome. And I preach that so much, that I talk about having a vision, and so many people underestimate the power of that. But when you have a vision, almost a promised land at the end of the journey, it when it's that big, it almost pulls you to it because it's that strong, and it'll help you pull past the days that you don't want to get up and do something. And the more visual reminders you have of that makes it come clear almost every day. So I love that you had so many of them. It just works, and I wish
it does.
People, because I had I had an underdog story. I think every athlete almost has an underdog or setback story somewhere. But when I started doing well and people were like, where did you come from? I told them, I just had a vision. I saw this a long time ago. And people kind of wrote it off. They didn't really know what it was about. I think that's another thing that kind of really binds high achievers together, is that most people, like high 90s, had some kind of promised land that they were heading to. And that's the thing that drove them. And I love that you had the rings on your mirror and all those quotes to back that up.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing during that time too that I learned is it's surrounding yourself with good people, but it's also training those people as to who you are, So I made sure that everybody knew that that was what I was committed to, and that was what I was going to do every day, so that if I didn't show up, they'd be like, where are you? Right? Like, it just didn't work. Yeah. So the people around me, they knew what I wanted to achieve. I told them what I wanted. I shared it with them, and I told them I was counting on them to help me get there. Yeah. So you train the people around you to relate to you as the person who's going to do that work, and they don't let you get away with it when you're not.
Yeah. I that's one of the things I wish I heard that when I was kind of on my journey, because I kind of went into my shell almost. So if you didn't have anything to do with where I was going, I had such focus that I couldn't see my blind spots. So there were some people that were like, hey, have you been where, why aren't you responding? Or how come, I'm moved over here? I didn't really know how to articulate myself and let them know that, hey, I'm in my vision tunnel, man. I have to put in so much work and energy into this that it's hard to focus on almost anything else. So that would have been, I wish I heard that, because if I could have just, like David, you're going to have to, the people that are around you, some of them, you're going to have to train them how to view you. That would have definitely helped. So this is why, again, having these kind of talks, especially going back to the adversity, I think it really provide a lot of value to people that are doing the same thing. And not just in sports, these are analogies that you use throughout your life, no matter what you're doing now. If we went into anybody's world and started putting up that many more visual cues of where they're going, it would just come into clarity that much further. But that's one of my main reasons for teaching, having a vision and how to properly craft it, is that because so many people just don't know what they want, or they have a vague idea, but it's kind of blurry, and they have nothing to kind of pull them past the days that they don't feel like doing it. And, hearing your story, you had a lot of core people in your corner. And that's another thing that is so important, to have that foundation there with you, to keep you not only accountable, but to be there for you, even if they don't say anything. Just, their presence helps a lot.
Yeah, it really does. And then you have all those people to celebrate with at the end. So perfect.
Yeah, it is, for sure. That celebration with the people that helped you get there is an awesome feeling.
It is.
All right, so moving on now, 3 years has gone by, and now you're getting ready for your next run. Talk a little bit about that, and then when you actually got to that point where you're living your vision almost.
Yeah, so 3 years later, 3 years after breaking my feet, I got the chance to go back to competition again, and I had just 1 year to get ready for Torino. And it was challenging for sure. There was fear of that happening again,
right?
And all of that. And honestly, that's when I started throughout that process, I started to really dig deep on the sports psychology level and what I was going to need to do to get back, because I knew it was going to be challenging. One of the big things I had to accept was that I could go back to my sport and that could happen again. And that was hard. That was really hard to deal with, because that's a scary and not that fun thing, right? But until you can accept that could happen again, is the only time that you can actually just freely go out there and put it all on the line, right? So that was one step towards getting back. There was definitely some fear to get through. There was a lot of just managing that fear and figuring out how to get through that fear on a regular basis. So it was a lot of deep breathing exercises, a lot of relaxation, a lot of just, talking through things with those people, sports psych, with coaches. And I found myself at another Olympic trial, and I took a big crash at that Olympic trial, which happens in our sport all the time. And again, I got back to the top of the hill, and I was like covered in snow, and I had blood on my face and snow down my pants and like broken glasses. And I had a really good teammate come up, that same teammate actually that took my place in 2002, that was like, I'm going to help you get back to the Olympic Games. Came up and was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what do you mean? What am I doing? And he grounded me. He took me back to that place of like, one, you're 100% prepared. You've done everything you need to do to be here. You have every right to be here. You have every right to win this competition again. And you love this sport. Like, let's have some fun. What are you doing? So he kind of just recentered me, refocused me. And again, two of the best jumps of my life. I qualified for the Olympic Games again that night at that Olympic trials. And I can tell you that walking into the opening ceremonies after that whole ordeal with those teammates that helped me get there, was a memory that I will never forget. I mean, the sound of the stadium when you walk into an opening ceremony. I mean, the sound of a stadium, like, running through a tunnel, right? It's the same. It's the coolest feeling. It's the most amazing feeling. To know that you've accomplished what you set out to do, for me 14 years earlier, and to have all the people around you that have supported you in getting there is so awesome. My dad was there. My aunt was there. I had some cousins there. Some of my best friends were there to cheer me on. And, they were like, didn't even care about the competition. They were just so proud that we were there
Yeah.
and that we were representing our country, it was so cool, and it was so rewarding, and it's a memory I'll never forget.
Now, where was the stadium that you were in?
This is Torino. This is the first games I actually got to walk into the opening ceremonies was Torino, Italy. You know, we competed up in these beautiful Italian mountains. My background is Italian, so my whole mom's side is Italian. So for me, it was getting back to my roots. You know, my family was so happy to be there and eat good pizza and drink good coffee and, you know, just have a really awesome time. It was a really, really cool experience. I loved the Torino game.
Yeah. And then talk to me a little bit about, so you're there, you have this awesome moment. Now, if you could kind of go through that games all the way up until kind of the end of it, like what it meant for you, kind of what emotionally, I'm sure you're going through a lot again, and how you did and how you felt like you represented and what your dream, you know, being able to do it, what it meant when it finally closed. So
after Torino, it was go time. I mean, Torino, I did not perform the way that I had dreamed of performing back in 2002, but just getting there was just like such a celebration. I remember I crashed and I slid down the landing hill on my stomach, and I got up and I looked at my family standing on the fence, and they were ringing cowbells and cheering like I had just won a gold medal. And I was like, guys, come on. And then when I got over to them, I realized like, okay, I had just achieved this like dream that a 12-year-old announced 14 years earlier. And it was amazing and it was awesome. But I was like, okay, after this, it's go time. Like we're ready to perform from here on out. So after that, I got the chance to go to 2 more Olympic Games as an athlete, which was such an incredible experience. I won numerous World Cups. I got to stand on the top of the World Cup podium. It was an awesome ride. I mean, I had the coolest experience. I made Olympic finals. And then when I got to Sochi, which was my last games, I went into it knowing it was going to be my last games, and knowing that I had put literally like absolutely every single ounce of energy into this ride, and I had done everything right, the way that I knew was right, the way that I had decided was right, you know, for the 4 years leading up to Sochi. And so, you know, I finished 8th place in Sochi, which, to be honest, was result-wise a little bit disappointing. But when I skied to the bottom, you know, I looked around, I looked at the stadium, I looked at the stands, I looked at my coaches and my sports psych who was there and my dad and everyone who came out to support me. And I realized that there was literally not 1 ounce of anything else I could have put into it. And for that, I was incredibly proud. So I walked to the side of the hill. You know, I gave a good friend a hug, and she asked if I was okay. And I was like, yeah, I am. And she like literally held me back, held me by my shoulders, and was like, oh, you are okay. And I was like, I am. I'm great. I'm awesome. Like that was an amazing career. Like I just did that for 17 years of my life. It was incredible. And I am ready for what is next. And I can't wait. I can't wait to find out what's next and to move on. And, you know, I knew at that time that what I wanted to do was to support other athletes. And I have found a number of ways to do so. And so I'm really thankful to be where I am today and to have had the career that I had.
Yeah, that's so wonderful to be at that point where you know you kind of have no regrets. And
no regrets. I wouldn't have done anything differently.
And having all those people there and being able to look back on that, you know, that's so much bigger than any kind of award that anybody could give you. You know, that's more like the icing on the cake, but the cake, the whole damn thing is everything. It has everything to do with you as a person, the people around you, all the lessons you learned while doing it, and all the medals, if you will, that enriched your life. You know, because as an athlete, the private victories are always the ones that mean the most. That, you know, it doesn't matter who's around, that in your mind, you know that what you just did or how you performed or everybody that came together, you know, is a very special moment. And that's I know that is what you were feeling that last Olympics. And what a great way to kind of cap off your your career. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
The one last thing I want to get to is when the Olympics is over and, the final horns and whatever is getting played and now you're packing up to go home. What do you think for athletes out there who are in that position and, know they're going to go through challenges from, like you said, being so quiet now? What are some of the things that you would, I guess, recommend to athletes that are heading to that or experiencing that now?
Yeah, I think pretty much every athlete that I've talked to, whether it's retirement or after an Olympic Games or after a big event, maybe after a Super Bowl, I don't know. Everyone that I've talked to has gone through some version of a lull, whether you call it depression or situational depression, or if you're just kind of blue, it happens. And I would say a couple things. I would say, you're tempted to just stop doing all the stuff that you've been doing, right? So when I retired, I was tempted to stop working out and stop eating well and, stop communicating with my teammates and my coaches, because that's just what seemed like was next. But I would recommend, you've done this your entire life. Keep moving. Like, we know what the benefits of staying moving are for not just athletes, but for all people. So stay moving, find something to do. I ran a half Ironman, which was total craziness. I'm still looking for my next goal, but I just staying moving on a regular basis is very, very important to me. Just move every day, whether it's a long walk with the dog or it's a run or it's a lift or, whatever it is to keep yourself healthy. Also continue eating well. You're tempted just to go eat ice cream all day, but that's not going to make you feel good. So continue a routine that you're used to and reach out, whether it's a mental health professional that you need to talk to or a really good friend. Just stay in touch, keep reaching out no matter what. That to me is so important. Just keep talking. Some people, it may pass in a day and you may feel great the next day. Other people, it might go on for a really long time. So I think just the biggest things are continue doing the things that make you feel good. You might not need to work out all day like you did as an athlete.
Right.
But, during transition, keep moving, whether it's a transition from a job or whether it's a transition from sport. And just don't be afraid to ask for help. That's the biggest thing in my mind.
Yeah. And I think that lesson goes right along with what we're experiencing now. Keep moving,
absolutely.
Stay healthy, reach out for help. And I always tell people, especially, male athletes, because there's a lot of egos and there's a lot of, especially in football, there's, you get praised for being the biggest and hitting the hardest. So I always tell people, reach out, not because you're in a weak position, but rather it allows you to remain strong. And that one little shift helped a lot of people when I said that. And it was said to me, and that's, one thing that helped me, because you feel like, I'm a man or I'm an athlete, I'm Olympian, I can handle it myself because that's who I am and that's how I got where I got. So I think what you said was very good advice. And again, keep moving. Even if keep moving. You got to move every day.
Even if you don't want to.
You got to, if it's a walk, it's got to be something. And one other thing I would add to that for anybody listening who's experiencing something like that, I would like to add that what I teach people to have a vision. But one of the hard lessons that I think all athletes learn is that this is something I teach. I say, before you get to your vision of where your promised land, of exactly where you want to be, start in the back of your mind crafting a vision to the next one, because that again allows you to kind of hit the ground running instead of just falling flat on your face, because you're driven for so long to make the Olympics, to be there and to represent your country. And then when that's over and you've got nothing left, that could really drain and strain and deflate a lot of people. So what I would like to add to anybody, if they're going through that, start crafting something big again. And one of the quotes I like is, when life's end comes to you, let it find you climbing a new mountain instead of rolling down an old. And I remember when I first heard that, it made so much sense to me, because so many people are rolling down an old mountain that they climbed a long time before. Because, you know, we're all humans. Athletes is, you know, part of life. The adversities you go through, things you have to prepare for, the people that help you get to where you're going. Those are all life analogies. So this is much more than advice for Olympians. This is much more than advice for just athletes. This is, you know, life lessons. And I think we shared a lot of really great ones today, Emily. Thanks so much for joining. Now, before we go, I know you're a champion for the Classroom of Champions. So if we want to finish talking a little bit about that and how anybody might be able to contribute, where they could find you, I'll add some links in here. So it'll be easy to find. So take it away from there.
That would be great. So I would say one of the most impactful things I did as an athlete was be a mentor with Classroom Champions. And so as a mentor, I had a number of school kids across the U.S., and I had the chance to teach them the lessons that I learned as an athlete. And the teachers would implement a curriculum from the lessons that I taught. So whether it's on perseverance or big emotions, how to deal with big emotions, or goal setting, or being a part of your community, or diversity, all of these things that athletes are pretty good at talking about it, if you ask me. Right. So I loved being a mentor with Classroom Champions, and now I get the chance to be the athlete mentor manager. And I work with professional athletes like yourself, and I work with Olympians, Paralympians, and college athletes to get these athletes' messages to kids in schools across North America. So we are in Canada, we're in the US, we are global, and you can learn more about Classroom Champions at classroomchampions.org. So thank you for giving me that chance. I just think so many athletes have amazing stories to tell and messages to deliver, and I'm thankful that I get the chance to help them do that.
Absolutely. That was very well said. Classrooms from Champions. I'll put the links down below. Emily, thanks so much for joining today, and look forward to possibly doing follow-up one in the future, and anything else I could do for, you know, Classrooms for Champions, just let me know.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us on Classroom Champions Live last week. Also, we had a blast.
Yeah,
and thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.